Hello and good morning. Coming at you live here from the land of faces, Facebook, and maybe LinkedIn or YouTube. But Asymmetric Habits with Jerry Handley of Viking Performance Training. That's me and my good friend Jonathan Pishner of Apex Counseling, where we talk about small little changes you can make to your daily routines or maybe weekly routines that tend to have outsized gains and effects on helping you improve your life, achieve your goals, or just hopefully overall be happier, less stressed, something you name it. So today, this is actually just a topic that JP just brought up this morning, but I think it's going to be a good one. Is intense work versus relaxed work, and why both are important. Um, I know like balance is something we talk about a lot, or finding, but also the best value and getting the most bang out of your buck. Again, that in itself is what we're talking about with asymmetric habits. So tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about with this topic, brother.
So I ended up having this conversation maybe a couple of weeks ago. In counseling, I see a lot of anxious high performers, law students, med students, business owners, doctors, people who are very productive, very high performing. And one of the trends I noticed when I was talking to one of my clients was uh, that there's not a middle setting for a lot of these people. They either understand absurdly 100% completely all out work or doing nothing. And they don't have a middle setting, which what I when I was talking to my client, I just took it to calling it relaxed work as opposed to intense work. And the simple fact is, after I started thinking about it, is there's a lot of people who have made up that they should, when they are at work or doing working on their business, doing whatever, or even just working out, that they should be able to maintain a complete 100% intensity rate the entire time. And worse, they kind of have an image of the in their head of what that would look like, of how much work they would be able to get done in a day.
Mhm.
And since it's not possible to maintain that when they don't meet it, which will be basically every day, they oftentimes feel very bad about themselves. They think their business is going to go under, that they're not good enough, or that they're somehow lazy or ineffective. And when I was talking to that particular client, I was like, "Oh gosh, okay, this is no wonder this is such a problem, because there's a lot of people who've lost track of that. You kind of have to alternate intense work with relaxed work just to maintain the amount of nervous system energy you need to get through an 8 hour workday, or especially if you got to work 10 or 12 hours. But yeah, that's where that came from, was this one session, and realizing that a lot of people make up that they should be able to work at maximal intensity all of the time.
So when we talk about intensity, are we defining it as like how much you get done in a work block or a day, or is it actually talking about like something a little bit different?
Actually, that's a good question. I think you can measure intensity of work a number of ways, including how much you get done, or you can measure it on like the difficulty of tasks. So, for example, I can look and see over there off camera that y'all can't see a whole bunch of papers that need filed. Uh, I might make up that I should be able to do that in, I don't know, 10 minutes. To do it in 10 minutes would take a lot of fast physical movement and fast mental movement, remembering which file is where and which thing does this go in. Or I can take 30 minutes to do it and just go at a more relaxed pace. I can put on a podcast, just kind of stroll back and forth to the file cabinet. So it can be the way you approach a specific task. It can be the task itself. Um, I find this relaxed work. Like, we have never covered a topic where I've been like, like maximal intensity. But there's other types of work that I feel like I can't achieve a relaxed work state. So I have to be careful about how often I do those tasks.
Okay, now I definitely understand this, and yeah, like I have, I have a lot of personal stuff to add in this one. Actually, I think, because yeah, I can see where the different definitions and the different self perspectives, because like you said, so many people do have this idea of what they can achieve, and so, for whatever reason, when it comes to like yeah, like this, especially when we're trying to be productive, we do tend to think of ourselves as what we can do almost at our best. Like, and then that's, but then we try to make that the default and the standard. And just like you're saying, we let ourselves down, or, at best, we let ourselves down for just not being able to actually like accomplish that much. But at worst, we may actually get ourselves in like more of a pickle or a bind if we actually overpromised, under delivered to whether it's like a client or your boss, or maybe it causes relationship issues because you like really thought you were going to do this. You're like, I need to work on this,
Mhm.
and then when you're done, you're like, yeah, I didn't actually get done. I need to. Sorry, we have to cancel the date. What stuff like that, or I have to miss Susie's like blue belt test. Like all those different options, like all those things can happen. 'Cause I know actually for a long time earlier in my career from the business owner standpoint, I was I was taking a white space is the devil type of approach on a calendar. And I think that came initially from Grant Cardone. Um, was when I was like consuming his stuff. And well, yeah, so I mean literally like the planner was like fully written out, which I'm not going to go as far as saying that in itself is a terrible thing, but every single block that I had in there was a pretty high standard of like I should be able to get this done in an hour. I should be able to get this done in a half hour. Like
Well, and pause there and comment on something because I'm so curious what your experience would be. If we put it in terms of like being able to feel the toll on your brain and nervous system, what did that feel like to do that?
I mean it was frazzling. It was
That's a
I
good
got
word.
Yeah, I got very, very frazzled when I kept feeling like I was falling behind. And then it would basically snowball because combined with another one of my traits, which is thinking of weeks starting on Mondays, if by like Tuesday I started feeling like I got behind, then it usually ended up affecting every other day I had left in the week. And then it was like, then
Mhm.
I spent weekends thinking like, okay, I'm good. I can reset. Let me readjust the start of this next week. And it almost always led to snowballing. And it led to that, like, I am not like, yeah, it led to a lot of feelings of failure or being out of control because of that snowball effect.
Yeah, and how could it not?
Yeah, exactly. Um, it's funny because I mean, like I haven't taken that approach in a very long time, but it is overall, nevertheless, still an issue that I know I'm personally like working on balancing is the different types of work.
Mhm.
Um, and
I
actually,
have
yeah,
a
like
lot of empathy for that because I naturally prefer to work at maximal intensity, and I have to remind myself a lot that it is not only okay but necessary to alternate into relaxed work and like slow down a little bit
right.
just so that I don't burn out.
Yeah, and like there's differences here or some like nuances from depending on where you're coming from. Like, I feel like if you're if we're talking work and you're an employee, you have a role, like maybe you're motivated or feel like you're motivated by something like just doing a good job or trying to get a promotion, something like that. So you feel like you need to do more. Or maybe the pressure is external, and it's coming from like your bosses, your superiors telling you to do more. Um, and then there's also the nuance of, do you like what you do, or is it more of just simply what you do to get paid? And if we're like outside of work, this same situation can happen when it comes to hobbies, training,
Mhm.
workouts, like this. So even though we're talking about work, like I do want people to realize that this can happen. The same type of idea can happen like in a lot of different fields.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that the way different types of work and whether you like it or not, because realistically, the intensity is kind of measured on the toll it takes on your nervous system. Uh,
Yes.
and you and I have joked a lot about spreadsheets and about how I hate them and you love them. it doesn't matter how simple the spreadsheet or paper organization stuff is, that is at best medium taxing to my nervous system and oftentimes very highly taxing.
Mhm.
Now, on paper, that sounds like it shouldn't be. It's just take number, put here. Like so objectively, it sounds like it should not be, but my nervous system didn't get the memo apparently. And what a lot of people sadly do is they then get negatively judgmental of themselves, of like something that is actually intense work for them that they feel like shouldn't be, as if we get to decide. And a
Mhm.
lot of times there's, I mean, you can make stuff a little less intense over the course of time and getting used to it, but I don't know you can ever take it from like highly taxing down to zero, especially as it relates to preferences and things, whether you enjoy it or not, because that changes the tax on the nervous system.
Yeah, and man, I'm so glad you're bringing this stuff up. It's like for me, the ones that tend to take a lot of a lot of toll on me are actually or like actual conversation, like not even the conversations, but the act of needing to converse, like respond to text, check emails, check social media messages and respond to them in a timely manner, check voicemails or return phone calls. That is my like that to me is like spreadsheets are to you. Like, which is terrible because that's how I get new clients. So like again, so I feel like I really need to stop feeling so like worn down by this. Like I said, I don't really get to choose it. It's funny because
Mhm.
it's not the conversation. So this isn't like an introvert extrovert energy type of thing or something like that. At least not directly. It's there's just
Well,
something.
and I hate those terms anyway. Those are so
Yeah,
overdone.
so I'm just like throwing them out there for like the way a lot of people tend to generalize it, but it's
Yeah.
something more specific to me anyway. Like I said, of the act of simply needing to check up on those. So actually, just like it's funny because I've done a lot of things just this week to try to like simplify these things. Um, so what I haven't even gotten to play around with this yet, but one is just 2 days ago. I basically like set up an app and like both phone and website wise that let me at least put 6 of my social media accounts, which sucks that I have more than that, but that's most of them anyway. 6 of my social media accounts onto one app in one place. I don't even have to click to change them. It's like literally every message comes in just one thread, and there's a little icon that says where it comes from. Um, and I'm like, this could be amazing. This could be a game changer because finally I don't have to go on Instagram and check 3 different accounts and then go to Facebook and check 4 different accounts. Like it'll finally just most of it will be in one place. And I'm like, yay, like this will finally hopefully be easier, which will then make it less intense, less worrisome for me.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So let's talk about something, because you said a change you made, and I'd be curious because I bet a lot of people would get benefit from it. Because at some point you stumbled upon that you didn't need to try and work at maximal intensity 100% of the time. Uh, what happened that gave you permission to make that change? Because a lot of people really struggle to give themselves permission to intersperse relaxed work or even rest, God forbid, with high intensity work.
Oh man, I don't even feel like I've made enough progress to feel like saying permission is it. But when I step outside and look at it, I realize that I have. Um, the biggest thing is that I finally. Well, okay, so actually, this goes a lot with yesterday, just yesterday. Um, it's in not in this. I was hoping it was right beside me, but it's not. But is I realized that I was getting too worked up, thinking of how many things I either wanted to do or felt needed to be done. You know, now, soon, by a certain deadline, whatever. So decided I was like, okay, I always have like my to-do list. I'm rewriting it or whatever it is. And I generally try to separate it between like what's more important, what's not. But I was like, let me put one and put actual deadlines. Like what is the actual deadline on these things? So basically I called myself out from that moment. I was like, okay, I say that I have these deadlines. Let me actually write them down. So I wrote my list down. And then I was like, okay, this is my ideal deadline. This is the actual deadline. I'm going to write these things down. I looked at it and I was like, huh, like almost none of these things have actual deadlines that are anywhere near now. like,
Yeah. Hell, even your taxes don't have actual deadlines because all you got to do is file a form and be like, "Hey,
yeah,
IRS, bro, I'll be late."
they're on that list. Yeah, like I was literally next to Ashley, my wife, had just sat there, had just gone over, had just like an hour ago told her about these things, and I just go, "Huh, that's weird." Like, um, but then, but then also having the difference between okay, when I have an ideal versus when it is different will also hopefully let me look at that. And so I mean that was like so it's funny because that's where I was at there, but anyway, to step back closer to the actual question, the biggest thing is I finally at least like I've started being more intentional about what are the moves that I can make that will actually decrease some of the things that I feel need done or the stressful things. So really, I got better at things we talked about before on these shows. I got better
I
at
was just thinking, I was like, man, you're living asymmetric habits. What's the one move I
yeah,
can make that's going to eliminate 6 things?
yeah, exactly. Like I got better at like delegating. I got better at automating, and I even got better at just simply like deleting and just being like, okay, this is actually not like if I just get rid of this 30% of the steps in this, does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it doesn't. Um, so really, that was a lot of things. Was like I've been doing a lot of addition through subtraction, like that. That's
Nice.
one of my biggest ones.
Now, let me ask a follow up question because there's a thing that a lot of people would accidentally do to themselves. A lot of people would accidentally come up with, oh, but now that I'm doing less work, I'm lazy or some other similar negative self judgment. And it sounds like you got to skip that step. What happened that lets you skip looking at yourself as lazy? Because you're not. I mean, hell, I watch how much you work. I mean, I know you're not lazy, but a lot of people would really easily make that up, especially if they spent 10 years trying to go all out and they're just now trying to get into some relaxed work as opposed to maximum intensity.
Being able to look at the actual results and the
Mm,
actual objectivity, like that was the main one for me. Because I said, because I knew, because like I did go through like that feeling, or at least feeling like I still need to do more. And this is one of those places that like nuance can still come in to play some. There's a phone ringing here somewhere, and I don't even know which one it is. I'm sorry. I literally
that's
have
okay.
no
I can't
idea.
hear it, so I mean, it's not
It's
bothering nothing.
it's my other pocket. There it is. I was like,
How many phones you got, dude?
I temporarily had three, but at least I'm down to two again. It's like,
Here we are talking about relaxed work. You're carrying around 3 phones.
I mean, I literally had to like experience my nightmare for a while. Three phones. Um, and like, but anyway, it was okay. So coming back, I was like trying to catch back up where I'm at. Yeah, so I did
Lazy.
feel like I needed to, or I felt like I could use that time to work more. And so this is one place where the nuances came in, because like for me, and this is actually I feel like one of the first places to really talk about relaxed work too, is for me, and like I know in a lot of cases you is like the overall sense of what I'm trying to do with the business or the work that I'm doing or projects that I want to do are fun. Like, not all of it is fun. Like I just mentioned, like messaging to me is not fun. And there's basic stuff like, when if accounting falls behind, that's not fun, et cetera, et cetera. But the overall big things and like new projects, those are usually fun. So when so I did start filling my schedule up back with more work a lot of times. And that's what I need to like keep an eye on is making sure that I'm not trying to do too much and just doing it all the time. And that's where transparency is a big one on that. Like again, like objectivity with yourself, like that's one. But then also like if you have significant other relationship, marriage, family, whatever, like transparency about it and hopefully open communication about it. Like like there's a difference between do you need to work versus can you not work, and there's also a difference between on the flip side there's a difference between I'm doing this because I think I have to or I'm doing this because it's fun and relaxing to me. And
Mm-hmm.
these are conversations we've actually had right here in this house recently. So it's like now it's like okay, I have my work hours that are my in the business on the business hours, that I'm trying to stay consistent with. And then outside of those hours, if I want to work on something, like, it's okay. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, don't do that. But those are set up more for like more what is fun and relaxing to me.
Yeah.
So I may still be working, but it's on something that's like more what I want to do. Like, it might include more people, like whether it's something that exists, could be the gym itself. It could be something like trying to, get clothing brand up or whatever it is.
So,
But
so you found ways to say to yourself, here is why relaxed work is good. Like you figured out ways to tell yourself that story.
right, exactly. And it's like, and if I'm going to have longer days of work on some days, this is a way to also separate, at least like, over here is when I'm going to do the things that need to be done. And I may not necessarily want to, but they're just the necessities, versus over here, if I continue to work, this is going to be more like for me. And again, like more relaxing, more fun for me.
Yeah. Matter of fact, let's take something you're saying there and really highlight it, because what a lot of people don't realize is, today's Friday. If you listen to this podcast after it's already been recorded, our Friday morning productivity starts probably Wednesday afternoon. If I overwork on Wednesday, am I going to show up with enough energy Friday morning to be as productive
Mhm.
as I want to be? A lot of people really don't realize the long tail of overexhausting yourself. And there's such a wonderful model for this. So my brother's a firefighter, and their shift model is 24 hours on, 24 hours off, 24 hours on, 5 days off. So they work
Mhm.
48 hours a week, but with a gigantic gap before they got to come back. And I mean, some people choose to work overtime and maybe don't recover as well as they could have. But that model actually enshrines the idea of like, oh, we realize that how much you work has a long tail. We don't want you to like overexpend yourselves, especially on a craft as important as firefighting, because that's moment to moment decisions. That's, the ability. I mean, if you're way overexhausted and you can't pick up a 250-pound person and carry them out, I mean, that's a major problem. Uh, what a lot of people, especially knowledge workers are so bad at this. And I say that as if it's not myself. It's me too. I'm bad at this. I'll forget that I need to really kind of pace my energy, because by the time I get to the end of the week and I'm burned out, I mean, I have my admin day on Fridays when I take care of all my non-client stuff. If I want that to go well, I've got to intersperse intense and relaxed work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or else I'm going to have a sadly unproductive Friday. So, yeah, a lot of people just miss out on the long tail of, if you overexpend yourself, how much time it takes to regain all of your energy.
Mhm. Absolutely. In fact, this is a good time to, again, bring in some of the other examples that people don't think of. Like, you see this a lot with exercise, because that's something, like we said, like a lot of times when we're talking about the intensity is by the toll that it takes on your nervous system. Um, Exercise, even with the best of muscular recovery protocols, ex- exercise burnout generally tends to happen in the nervous system as well. And yeah, like, you can definitely overwork the muscles themselves, but that's like we're saying, like, even if that part is on point as much as it can be, if you try to go intense all the time when it comes to exercise routines, your nervous system will start to first slow down, then plateau, and then eventually like regress and go backwards and even break down. So I said this idea of nonstop intensity like affects a lot of different ways. So that's why, like, that's why, even looking at athletes like, or like, world class athletes, which are just simply that like example of, like, exercise routines to the extreme. They train a lot, but they do make it their full-time job, and they also make the recovery of it their full-time job. So they may, yeah, work out or train 3 times a day in a lot of cases, but they have a lot of light, relaxed sessions in there. They also have professional recovery work, professional nutrition. Like it's all built in.
I've said before, I've looked up Shaq's recovery regimen once, and I mean, it was so stupid how much had to happen to keep that man's body together from all the
Yeah, yeah,
basketball.
yeah, like professional athletes will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per year on recovery, on maximizing it. And even then, like I said, though, they still have a lot of relaxed work, and
Mhm.
they still, like the smarter ones still at least like take time off, and and even on the work side, like we talked about importance. There's distance. So like in distance endurance is a great example. Well, I'm gonna like multiple examples here. One of them is distance endurance. Great example of the importance of relaxed work. When you're talking about in like an endurance race, even if it's not like super high, endurance. Let's use a 5K. Like a fast 5K is like 12, 13 minutes, like a really fast one. And then nevertheless a good recreational 5K is still like 19 to 21, 22 minutes, like really good recreational, something like that. But the difference when you actually break down what happens, it's not the people who do the more speed sessions or high intensity sessions through the week. There's a pretty strong correlation in who wins based on who does the most easy mileage through the week. So like it's not who does like the best or the fastest workouts. It's who over time did the more relaxed work. And we're talking, like I said, very, very easy, relaxed pace, but they just put in easy mileage to make that happen. So at the, so like at high school, for example, your best athletes in high school may put in 40, 60 miles a week. That's still a lot for like a 1 mile, 2 mile race. But when you get to like college or international world class, they've built their bodies up to put in like 100, 120, 140 mile weeks. That's it.
Mhm.
But through relaxed, easier work. And again, proper recovery. But then even on the flip side, not endurance, use something that's more like power, explosive related, whether it's, like powerlifting, weightlifting, CrossFit, or just the actual sports like football, basketball, you name wrestling, you name it, is anytime one of these like athletes or entire teams is coming up to their like most important, or what they consider their most important competitions, assuming that they're doing things like correctly and have a good process, they almost always go into that last week or two like easier and lighter. They do more relaxed work. Like
Yep.
they're not going in there doing like the hardest workouts, the hardest practice sessions 3 days before the game. They're spending it instead just simply, getting their bodies warm, doing more like just simple walkthroughs, stuff like that, like going over a couple key points they want to make sure are top of mind. And that's it.
Mhm.
Like they remove the intense work ahead of time and substitute it with more relaxed work so they can be at their peak condition during the actual competition.
Well, and even an amateur like me, I didn't really think of this as I was stumbling into some of my routines, but I have it accidentally built into my stuff too. Because so I like when I lift weights, I like to do the Mike Mincer method, which I don't know how familiar you are with that, but basically like a couple of sets at just like ultra max intensity, but not necessarily super long or tons of reps or anything. And so my workouts will tend to be like a few exercises at that. And then I'll have a couple of exercises where I like just do it way more easy and relaxed and do for more reps. And then I'll go back and do one or two exercises at like maximal intensity, which I didn't really mean to do it that way. It just kind of I stumbled into it. Or when I deadlift, a lot of times I'll deadlift for reps instead of like trying to get one or two giant heavy lifts, and I'll do that for 3 months, and then I'll shoot for a PR. But I mean, it's all just light weights for reps, and that has worked wonderfully. Just doing like you were saying, the relaxed work. Um, I remember there was a cool story. I think it was Tim Ferriss told this story in his podcast, uh, and I tell it to clients every now and again to highlight the sometimes the results differences between the two. Because he was telling a story about like how he did this bike ride it was about a 45-minute bike ride, and he was really pushed hard to get it to 45 minutes or whatever it was, 40, something like that. And one day he just wasn't feeling. He's like, you know what? Let me just take this at a much more relaxed pace. See how long it actually takes. The relaxed pace added about 2 or so minutes to his time. Mm-hmm. So functionally, almost no difference. Which I just thought was such a bananas story. But the more I do this stuff physically, the more I see it play out, and the more I do it mentally with knowledge work. I mean, it seems like it bears out the same thing, which is kind of really a long-winded way of working around to try to really get people to see and give themselves permission to just sometimes do the more relaxed work.
You know what I just suddenly had a visual of that is kind of similar to this, is in a lot of ways, the intense work and relaxed work is shown or highlighted in video games. Like especially newer-ish video games, I think. Like, but I can still think of old ones too. Like, how many games, for example, are there where when you're the character? Like, have you seen or played, for example, like Zelda Breath of the Wild? That's one of the.
I have not played that one. I never played a lot of Zelda games, but I'm pretty familiar with game difficulty and intensity curves. So I'm going to understand no matter what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, because I'm just thinking of that one because I mean it's like it's newer-ish, it's enormous, and I've seen it. But it's one of these things where like when the character is doing actions, say like fighting, swinging a sword, whatever, climbing rocks, you have that overall like you can do actions for this long energy bar decreasing. But then when you like cut it down and all you're doing is like walking or something like that, the energy bar starts to recover again. So so it's like
okay.
Yeah, so you can't constantly attack in these games anymore because you'll eventually get exhausted, and then you have to go and like rest and recover before you can do it again. Even old games, like all right, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. It's like something like that,
All right, Grandpa.
Like all the great Super Nintendo or Nintendo Entertainment games where if you hit both buttons, because there were 2 back then, both buttons at the time, you get like the character's special move, but it also took your part of your health bar away. So it cost you part of your health bar to do the special, most powerful move. So in this funny, crazy way, video games have had this idea of like, okay, we have this intense work, but you can't do it all the time because it will cost you.
That's wonderful because I actually had forgotten that because I literally played that game, kept doing the special move, and then somebody hit me once and I died, and I was like, wait, what happened? And then I watched the life bar the next time, and I was like, oh, oops, I'm. Yep. But of course, in my like 9-year-old brain, of course, I didn't put together like, oh, too high intensity, but like, yes, that's precisely it. And I mean, for those of our audience who play video games, I mean, yeah, you got the stamina bar in Skyrim, you got the stamina bar in the UFC games. That's a wonderful parallel.
Yeah, and like the two main things here are like the one, we're about relaxed work. Is that one, like you mentioned it was Tim Ferriss example, right? Use it with the bicycle.
I think it was. I won't swear to that, but I'm pretty sure it was.
Like in that example, one thing about relaxed work is that a lot of times the actual pace that you get things done in is not that different than intense work. When we think it's going to be way faster, it's like we think it's going to be this enormous difference, but like you said, then when you actually objectively look at it, it's a lot smaller. So for one, it's way less energy cost for pretty close to the same output. And number two is that if it is like really relaxed or even or maybe even fun, nourishing, whatever, like actually relaxing, then it does help us actually recover that energy as well. It's not taking it, but it's actually recovering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let's increase that one step because this is a really good one for a lot of people because I'm going through it right this second myself. I'm at the tail end of being sick or from mild throat infection or something, and one of the things that I have found is when I'm on the tail end of being sick, I can work. I basically need to do no high intensity work, or I risk getting like really extending the amount of time before I'm better again, or worse, this has happened once or twice. And I learned a hard lesson was I'll just get sick again. If I try and do too much high intensity work, my body will break down. Suddenly my immune response won't be as good and the infection will just come back. But there's a lot of people who accidentally, no matter no matter what level of compromise they're in, whether it's an acute infection like I'm at the tail end of, or an injury. God, athletes and injuries and not doing relaxed work. I'm sure you know about that.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge workers who like are going through something else outside their life. I'm working with a knowledge worker who has a sick parent, who's trying to work at the same intensity, and that's just not going to happen. So a lot of people also lose track of, if you're compromised in some way, doing more relaxed work instead of just like trying to be maximum intensity is going to get you more done, and it's going to not screw up your recovery time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The recovery time, I think, is definitely the part that so many people don't realize is going to hit them so hard. Like it's just people don't realize how much of a toll things take when it's not physical.
Yep.
Like it's like, and like I mean, are like arguably, but also kind of not, is like emotional or like mental stress is so much deeper than physical stress. Like I said, I mean, everything can be taken to an extreme, and then they're pretty much comparable, like the same or incomparable at the same time. I don't know. Again, extremes are a different thing. But yeah, like when people think of what actually takes them out, they tend to overestimate what physical things, what like the effect that a physical thing will take, for example. But I think drastically underestimate whatever's going on in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Well, and you know, just to tell a story about that. I mean, happily, this is rare. This doesn't happen nearly as often. Um, but I was working with someone who had what appeared to be a major health event. Uh, and this isn't what it actually was, but just for privacy purposes, we'll call it a stroke, because that's something that has clear physical signs. Um, and what happened was they arrived at the hospital, and there's no physical evidence, like after they do all the scans, of like the thing that would cause such an event. All the symptoms were present, but when you do the physical test, it all comes back negative. So they told the doctor, or they told the patient, this could have been psychological. Go get that checked. And this was a person who'd worked with me before, so he called up and just came back and said, well, let's track this. And we timelined out the mental and emotional events that were happening in that person's life. Okay, this happened, and this job stuff happened, this family stuff happened, and just like constantly ratcheting up in maximal intensity the toll it was taking on their mental and emotional state. And then a giant event happened, and then 3 days later, suddenly they're in the hospital for what looked like a stroke, and it wasn't. And talking about the invisible mental and emotional effects of being too high intensity, that person literally had what looked like a major health event, which was just actually way overexpending the nervous system for, and happily, it takes a long time to do that. This person had done it, overexpended their system for like 6 months or 9 or 12. I mean, some absurd amount of time. So it's very hard to get yourself to that level, but just as my warning to people who have trouble with relaxed work, you certainly can overexpend your nervous system to major medical events. Thank God it was actually psychosomatic, not an honest to God event, but it could have been, because overtaxing the nervous system 100% can lead to hypertension, heart attacks. There's some evidence, I guess, out there that shows that cancer incidence rates go up. So, I think that's going to be kind of my warning of, please consider the thing we're talking about, because when you don't, you can really wreck your health over the course of weeks, months, and years of overexpending your nervous system.
For sure, like there's so much the bodies do or like react to, respond, adapt to positively or negatively that we still don't really understand. So two things that I want to bring up or ask, but before wrapping it up, um, or like coming back to like almost the beginning of the podcast with the intensity of work or trying to fit too much in, or again overestimating what we should be able to do. So I don't remember where I heard this, and but I mean like I remember at some point in time coming across the idea that however long you think something is going to take, you should give yourself 3 times as much time to do that. Like so it's okay. Let me actually restart because it's two.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have to
Yeah,
clarify that.
because it's actually the two things I want to bring up are actually kind of seemingly opposites, but they each actually have a good point, like in the specifics. I think one is that like if you think that you can do stuff, a lot of things in a very specific short amount of time. So the perfect schedule example, where like I would by like Tuesday morning be behind. Um, in that type of example, it would be like, okay, if you think you can do things this fast, you should probably give yourself like 3 times as much time to actually do it. Like, and almost like I said, like that's almost supposed to match the speed that we over assume what we can actually get done in a certain amount of time. Now, on the flip side, again, this seems contradictory, but I do believe it's different, is where we as society, at least, especially out here in like the US, um, I think this is better in some other international areas and cultures, is that we think that to be more productive or do more, we have to work more. And thus is like finding out that we could actually probably achieve just as much or at least close to, or maybe even more if we did actually work less. Like the American work week plus overtime compared to what a lot of like, European countries are going to, or, 2 weeks of annual vacation time compared to like 3 months of annual vacation time. Like those big differences a lot of times end up not actually hurting productivity at all. So there's something in that idea of like a lot when we are thinking about working more, we are filling that up with a lot of dead time that doesn't actually do anything. And on the flip side, when we're trying to,
Yeah, it's performative. It's almost like work theater in a way.
yes, exactly. Like we're expanding work we need to do, thinking that it will just automatically result in more. But then when we're in that mindset of like, okay, like I'm going to do all these things tomorrow, um, we're probably estimating on the incorrect side, and that's when we should probably give ourselves more time to get things done.
So then the question becomes what? Because you framed that, but then there wasn't a
Yeah,
question at
like
the end.
I just had to talk myself through it. um, but it's almost just like two different things to be aware of. Just that, like, yeah, one, like when you're talking about really intense, like really trying to get a lot of stuff done. Well, that's almost like a priority thing because if you overbook that schedule that way, like I used to, or like I said, no white space on the calendar, that was realistically me thinking, okay, I have like 16 priorities, which meant that I have 0 priorities.
Yes, if everything is important, nothing's important.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, if I instead just actually narrowed it down to at least like 3, but realistically, in the true sense of the word priority, 1 at a time, and just did that, I've probably been way more effective rather than trying to do all these things back to back to back to back to back and not
Yeah.
actually being able to do any of them correctly. And on the flip side is also realizing, hey, like again, find your best times, find your best rhythms. And if that is actually giving you the results you're looking for, and you don't have to, necessarily like work more, fill more in, then if you don't want to, don't.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing I would because there's a couple of sound bites that are really worth having in your head that really kind of go into relaxed work. Um, Number one is, and man, I really wish I could give credit for this because it's not my quote, and I can't remember who said it. Uh, People often overestimate what they can get done in a day, but underestimate what they can get done in a year.
Yeah.
And the overestimation of what you can get done in a day is really the thing that's the most destructive. Because if you do like you were doing, I mean, you're way overtaxed. But if you just take some sort of pace that fits you, you can get tons done. But that ends up being offensive to a lot of people who were raised, especially in American culture, that prizes this kind of just obsession with work and productivity. Although we're not as bad as we could be. I mean, in Japan, there's actually a word in their language for people who work themselves to death, which happily we don't have nearly so much of a problem with, but that does exist. And oh gosh, what was the other one? I had it in my head now. I read this just the other day. Beware of treating life as just a list of things to do before you die.
I like that.
I read that. I had to put the book down for a second because I was like, thank God I read that now and not 5 years ago when I was really doing that, because like that would have slammed into me at that time. But that's what a lot of people do when they work with this obsession with maximum intensity work and productivity. Is the relaxed work and the rest is when you're actually living. Like, it's okay to do the maximum intensity stuff, but that's so hard on the nervous system that's not what most people would call living, ... with a few exceptions. Yes, there's some exceptions to that, but not enough that the generalization doesn't fit nicely.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right, brother. You want to do a little quick wrap up for this, or anything else you want to add to it? I think this is
yes. I'm just going to highlight the one bullet point. As a matter of fact, I didn't realize until a little bit ago, this dovetails nicely with our last one, which was don't do things that are inappropriately hard.
Yeah.
Working at maximum intensity all the time is inappropriately hard. Period. End of discussion. I will fist fight anyone who says otherwise. But give yourself permission if you're one of those anxiously productive people, like Jerry and I both used to be, and sometimes we'll slip back into. Give yourself permission to do relaxed work. It's okay to intersperse, and you will actually get further because you're not overtaxing your nervous system. I know that's hard to believe for a lot of people because we have enshrined this work obsession in our culture. Just because it's enshrined in our culture does not mean it is correct.
Absolutely. That's good. All right, bro. It's a great time. This is a great topic you brought up this morning. I'm glad we did this. We called this audible. So, all right, everybody. Hope this helps you out. Like I said, this is definitely good stuff happening here. We were talking earlier. We're having some technical difficulties actually uploading the newest episodes to the podcast, just with some updates that the website hosting server made, and it's not my language. So once we get that figured out, these new episodes will start appearing again on the Asymmetric Habits podcast. Until then, you can always catch us live roughly every 2 weeks. And on behalf of Asymmetric Habits, we'll catch you guys later.
See y'all.